sent a Facebook friend request that led to cultivating relationships throughout dental school. It led to me meeting my mentor. It led to speaking at my first dental conference. It's led to speaking at some other conferences. It's led me to meet some other amazing people, all from one Facebook friend request that I sent, because I made a conscious effort that I was going to meet people and extend my sphere of influence.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. I want to thank my sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and DocSites, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox every Friday at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with a new episode. My guest is Cole Herzik. Cole is a general dentist from Florida, practicing there currently. He graduated from the LECOM SDM in 2023, so he's a brand new graduate. He graduated top of his class. He's currently the CEO of the Private Dentist Alliance and the CEO and founder of the Man nonprofit and podcast. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Cole Herzik. Cole, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Len. I'm really, really grateful of your time, and I really enjoy speaking with you. So let's have an awesome conversation, like always.
Why don't you start off with just a very brief background to kind of what you're involved with, how you got there. Obviously, you just graduated school a little over a year ago, so you're a new grad working as an associate, but you've found a little bit of way into the industry. So just kind of give everybody, because if they don't know who you are, let them know who you are. So kind of give a little bit of extended background on yourself.
Absolutely. So like you said, I graduated in 2023, but very early on in dental school, I realized that I didn't probably at the end of the day want to just be a 9-to-5 clinical dentist just working in the practice. And I knew that there were a lot more brains to pick than just the people that were in my university teaching. So early on, I had helped start a podcast when I was in my first year of dental school called Dental Student Vibes Podcast with 4 other dental student friends. And my class was the year that COVID happened. So we had a very fortuitous situation kind of be presented in ourselves that we were home for a period of time, and other dentists and other dental students from around the world, honestly, were at home as well. So we capitalized on that and were able to reach out to people on Instagram, on Facebook, on all kinds of different social media platforms to pick their brain, learn from them, podcast. And I was able to just reach out to a bunch of people and say, hey, this is who I am. I would love to learn a little bit more about yourself. And I would love to see if there's anything that you could offer to my education and I could help also offer to you. So it was a wonderful thing where I told you this story before, and I've mentioned this a couple times now, where all of this has led from one Facebook friend request that I sent when I was back in dental school. I sent a Facebook friend request that led to cultivating relationships all throughout dental school. It led to me meeting my mentor, Dr. Greg Winreg, that handed me the nonprofit that I now run in his honor. It then led to me speaking at my first dental conference, which I met you back in February. It's led to me getting on the speaker route now and speaking at some other conferences. It's led me to meet some other amazing people, all from one Facebook friend request that I sent, because I made a conscious effort that I was going to meet people and extend my sphere of influence, if you will. So to go back, it's been this amazing journey, and I've been really, really, really happy with the progress.
So I want to just reiterate to everybody listening here, Cole was a dental student during COVID in 2000. So you were a second year dental student then, is that right?
First year, 2020.
First year dental student in 2020. The world was shut down. You decided you wanted to reach out to people, and you used social media as a way to do it. You reached out to, I want to say random people you did not know, but you saw they were in the dental industry.
Correct.
You connected with them. Obviously, it's led you to your nonprofit you're in. It's led you to relationships that have allowed you to speak at an event where we met at, and it's grown to other things as well. But it's you reaching out to people, taking the time to connect virtually with somebody who is in the dental space, but you don't know personally necessarily, and cultivate a relationship with them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Props to you, because a lot of people don't do that, or they use social media for the wrong reasons. You use it as a way of networking. And we're not talking about LinkedIn. You do that on LinkedIn. You don't necessarily do that on Facebook. So props to you to be able to do that and cultivate the relationship and take you, being out of practice or out of dental school for just a year now, a little over a year. You've done very well for yourself, and I give you a lot of credit. A lot of people wonder why or what they can do. Is who you know. It's not what you know. It's who you know in the industry. And I give you a lot of credit for taking the opportunity, taking the chance that you would mentor or you would find a mentor, find someone who you can discuss things with, and basically start a nice trajectory in your career. So again, kudos to you. I want to start off with one thing I know you're very fond of and very big about is mentorship. So can you talk about or talk to the audience, and we're viewing pleasure and listening pleasure because we got them both happening here. So can you talk about what mentorship means to you, who you look towards for mentorship, how you look at mentorship in the industry itself?
Absolutely. So for me, truly mentorship is everything, in that I am a firm believer in that I, of course, at the end of the day, had to take those steps to making my life happen, but I would not be who I am today had it not be for some wonderful mentors that I had in my past that propelled me forward in my career. And I'm somebody that always looks forward towards somebody that I can learn something from. Because I believe truly there's a lot of situations in life where you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel every single time. There's somebody that has come before you that has done something right, and they know the shortcuts and they know how to do it the right way and avoid less pitfalls along the way. So it's been my experience that I want to pick all those people's brains so that I don't have to make as many mistakes or fall into those pitfalls or have those, negative things happen to me along the path. I want to make sure that I'm on the right path, learning the right things from the right amount of people. So it's always been also a relationship thing for me. So Len, I don't even think this is something that I've shared with you. I tell patients, and I tell this to people all the time. People ask me, why did I get into dentistry and why do I do what I do? And it's, at the end of the day, I always knew that I wanted to be in healthcare and I wanted to take care of people. And it's a part of that, the title of this podcast of finding your why, and that my true why I've started to kind of realize in life is not just to be a general dentist or not just to be a this or a that. My why is I'm Cole and I really just love people. I like to make connections with people and I like to help people. But that's what it comes down to. I feel like my true superpower and why I love mentors and why I love to be a mentor myself is I love people. I love people giving information to me. I love to give information to people. I just love the relationships that are involved with meeting people and linking up with new people.
So a lot of that is you've started virtually, obviously through social media, but you've also continued that on live in person as well. You've taken a ton of C in the year that you've been out. So I know this wasn't on our list of things we wanted to talk about, but can you just kind of let, people always say CE is expensive. I don't have the money to do it. I don't have the time to invest. Can you talk about just in the year kind of what you've done from a CE perspective?
Absolutely. Well, since graduating dental school, if I really think back about it, even immediately, so a little backstory on myself, as soon as I graduated, I immediately moved out to California and worked out in California for about 6 months. Came back to Florida, started practicing back in Florida, so I'm dual licensed in both California and Florida. When I was out in California, immediately upon graduating, I did a bunch of CE out in the Beverly Hills and Los Angeles area, so some aesthetic courses with Pascal Meunier, like anterior composite resins. I did some TMD and ortho, expansion ortho cases with like Audrey Yoon and some people out there in California doing some awesome things there. And then back here in Florida, I've done the Pankey Institute. I did an implant continuum in Mexico. I did a couple different conferences. So I did the Savannah Grits and Nachos where I met you. I've done Supercharged with you, Allison, and Matt in Bermuda. Let's see, there's some other things as well. I've done some online. I've done a bunch of Invisalign online CE. And there's one other thing. I went to another conference in California for a couple of days, and that was about basically material selection.
So a lot of CE, a lot of hours, but a lot of big investment financially as well, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So why did I want to bring that up is I know that a lot of younger dentists are listening to this and they're either working as an associate, they have a lot of school loans, or they started a practice and they have a lot of practice loans and they're really limited on what they can do. Can you just talk about, what you feel the benefit that you have gotten from taking this CE in such a short period of time has been for you?
Absolutely. So for me, they say that saying, right? You don't know what you don't know. And truly getting out of school, I think the best way I can describe it and why I'm so passionate about this, and this is the direction that I'm taking my nonprofit, is the dental education space is fantastic. And I know you know this, Len, and there's a lot of people that know this. However, there are some pitfalls. There's some things where the education system could be set up better. I feel the best way to describe it as far as dentistry goes, dental school prepares you by giving you chapter 1 and the last chapter, but then everything in between is up to you to figure out. Or maybe they give you a glossary or a synopsis of what you need to know for this specific procedure or this specific realm of dentistry. But you need to figure out all the rest out, and you don't necessarily have enough time in dental school or how the current curriculum is set up to learn all of those things. So for me, I was like, I didn't ever want to be that person that didn't know how to do something. That's why, you read in my bio, I graduated number one in my class, and that was not by accident or mistake. I am a very firm believer in that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to put my all into it and do the best that I can. So I wanted to be the person that was well educated. I did the best possible treatments for my patients. I was knowledgeable, and I never wanted to walk into a treatment room with a patient and say, I would love to do this for you, but I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I had, all of the armamentarium I needed in my toolbox, if you will, to make sure that I could take the best care of my patients and so that I was as educated as I could be.
So we've been at a number of events already. We were at Grits and Nachos where we met. We both spoke. You were in Puerto Rico, at the Mastermind. We were also in Bermuda at Supercharge, like you said. And I had to be honest with you. I'm super impressed with the way you hold yourself, the way you present yourself, the way you talk about, things in public. So you definitely have done it the right way. And I give you a lot of credit for that because, not everybody understands what you need to do to make connections in the industry. And you've taken that for pretty far in such a short period of time. So I'm curious, Cole, the name of the podcast is Finding Your Why. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with unknowing what their why is. And you're out a year. You've obviously found your why. You know what you want to do. You know how you want to go about doing it. So can you talk a little bit about finding your why?
Absolutely. So, finding your why is something that if you asked me this question 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I wasn't 100% certain on, nor was I really focusing on, what my why really was, or did I even remotely have that idea of I need a why, or I'm doing this because it's my why. I was so ingrained in dental school and trying to grow my community and trying to focus on so many different things at one time. I was trying to podcast like we're doing now. I'm trying to learn how to do MOD class 2 preps. I'm learning how to balance a patient roster, have time to go to the gym, have a social life, be a human being, learn how to take care of an apartment now that I'm living all on my own. All these things I'm trying to balance all at the same period of time. So was I even focusing on what's my why? And then the more I've been in people's lives, I think that's the best way I can describe it. The more I've networked and met people, not just people in dentistry, but people that are just extremely impressive all across the board, which is another reason why I value mentorship so much. My mentors are not just people that are in this space or in this industry. They're people that I've met along the way that for one reason or another, they impress me because I look up to them and I go, wow, they have attributes that I would love to emulate, or I would love to be able to fill those shoes someday because I feel like that's truly what I resonate with. So for me, finding my why has been this in this past two years, a year and a half period of my life where I'm really trying to figure out what does my future look like? What do I want my legacy to be? Do I want my legacy to be that he worked 9 to 5 Monday through Friday in an office, breaking his back, doing class 2s and root canals for the rest of my life, and that's all that I'm remembered for? No, not really. I would love to be remembered for the fact that I am a good human being on this earth that is vowing to help people, and not just in dentistry. A human being that's vowing to help people in all regards, whether it's just a simple conversation that I have with a fellow peer or a conversation that I have with a patient that really, I don't do any treatment. We just have a conversation and it just changes their life about how they view something, or their education is enhanced because of a conversation we had about something about their life. Or I do something and I give them a good recommendation and they finally go to that doctor that they've been putting off seeing because I finally, break it down for them. Something like that where I make a difference. So, I really feel like my why is something that I found along this journey, and that my why is to constantly educate myself in every facet of my life. Even if I'm getting 0.00001% better every single day, I'm learning something new every single day and how to be the best version of myself and the most authentic version of myself.
Can you talk about, again, I know you're only a year out of school, but can you talk about what type of procedures you're already doing? I know you're placing implants. I know you're doing a ton of surgeries. Can you just give a perspective of where you are from the procedures that you've already done, and you can give an estimate of how many you think you've done of each procedure in just a short period of time.
Absolutely. Well, I have to back it up to dental school because number one, I was extremely blessed to go to LECOM and that I was afforded to do a lot more complex procedures in school because we didn't have any specialty departments in my fourth year, which a lot of dental students know in your third and fourth year. You might want to do some of the bigger procedures like extraction of third molars and molar endo or comprehensive smile makeover. And that stuff is just snatched up immediately and given to the specialty departments. In school, I was afforded that luxury to be able to do that as we had no specialty departments. And our fourth year clinical outreach location was in Defuniak Springs in the panhandle of Florida, where there are not a lot of general dentists nor specialists even present. So we were able to do a lot of those complex procedures, of course, with the supervision of a specialist or a general dentist that we had a lot of experience doing the case. So it goes back to also me being very much so a self-starter and pushing myself forward. So just like we know, the dental education space is not the best in that what do you have to do 4 or 5 crown preps to graduate, and that's really the only number of quota that you have, and they say, hey, great, now you can go practice dentistry after doing 5 crown preps and do it well. No way was I going to walk out of dental school only doing 4 or 5 crown preps. So I actually did over 50 crown preps when I was in school. I did molar endo, a handful of those. I did even going back the third molar extraction cases. I did a bunch of nitrous cases. So I did a lot of that even just in school. And then I even, as like my piece de resistance, cherry on top, if you will, as my like crown jewel case, I graduated dental school doing a full mouth case start to finish where I took out this young lady's third molars. I did all of her posterior endo. I did all of her posterior composites. I did chairside composite veneers from 21 to 28. I did bridges from 6 to 8 and 9 to 11. I did laser gingivectomy and crown lengthening. And I made sure that I restored everything and took clinical photography from start to finish and documented everything. So that's how I started graduating school. But I realized, again, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I wanted to get better. So that's why immediately after graduating, then I went to Pascal Magnier's interior composite courses when I was out in California. I didn't know a lot about ortho or TMD, so I did those expansion ortho TMD style courses. Again, TMD continuum and comprehensive restorative cases with Pankey Institute. Wanted to learn how to do implants, so that's why I did implant CE. I've done, some more CE even online as regards to full mouth comprehensive cases. Now in my practice, I'm also doing veneers because I've done a lot of work when I was out in California with a lot of dentists that were doing a lot of aesthetics, watching them perfect their craft. I'm doing a little bit of everything from veneers to bridges to crowns to endo, implants. And the only thing that's left on my list, which I hope to get into in the current practice that I'm working at, is all on 4, all on X.
How many implants do you think you've placed in the year you've been practicing?
The year that I've been practicing, I have placed a total of, I think I'm in the 40s, so somewhere in the 40 range.
That's impressive for being only a year. When I was in dental school, I graduated in 99. Things were very different. I did a ton of dentistry. I was always wanted to do dentistry because I didn't want to practice on patients, but I didn't do oral surgery. I didn't do enough oral surgery. So when I left, I didn't want to even get involved in it. So I didn't do it as a practicing dentist. I never really took teeth out other than, some teeth you can kind of flick out with your fingers and the teeth fall out. That was my oral surgery that I enjoyed doing. So you obviously took it upon yourself to learn while you were in dental school, and that I give you a lot of credit for that as well. Things go beyond clinical dentistry though. So talk about what you're doing outside of the clinical part of it to support your fellow colleagues in the industry.
Absolutely. So, that's the perfect new brainchild and focus of the nonprofit that I inherited from my mentor, Dr. Greg Winter, which you mentioned before. It's called the Private Dentist Alliance. And that's also part of my legacy that I would like to leave back, whether that's something I can accomplish in the next 5 years or I accomplish it when I'm 70, is that what I really want to make sure I do is, again, we've talked a little bit about on this podcast about the dental education space and how it's great. And there are some wonderful things, and we would not be here today if it were not for the dental education space. But there are a lot of pitfalls or, things that could be better. So my impact and what I would like to do and leave behind as my legacy is I'd like to do something about changing the dental education space, whether that's creating a whole brand new dental school with educators that, I hate to say it, but actually really want to be there and are handsomely compensated so they stay. Not just, older retired dentists that are looking for a hobby on the side, or dentists that did not make it clinically, or dentists that were not good business people, so their business went into bankruptcy. Those are basically the main three that you'll see in a dental school these days. Of course, there's some outliers, some people that really love to educate, so they're there. But as we know, unfortunately, the compensation just isn't there. So I don't know. I just feel like there's a lack of a lot of passion for a lot of these teachers to be there to teach these students and want to be there, to have enough gumption and drive and motivation to, be great educators for these students. Because again, we talked about this earlier, and it's something that I'm big on. It's all about the relationships and the mentorships. And if I don't feel like this person has great stake in my career, wanting me to be a better dentist or be a better person, I'm not going to learn a lot, because it's almost as if, they're going by a curriculum and we're kind of just skating by. So to go back to it, my new focus of my nonprofit is, we started out as a anti-DSO PPO freedom, very much so. Private Dentist Alliance is what it was started upon. And now kind of the direction that I'm taking it is, again, champion private practice. You don't necessarily have to join a DSO, as schools, unfortunately, are being, promoting, is that got to go DSO immediately as you graduate. That's not the case. Here I am. I've worked in now 3 private practices. I worked in a PPO-based private practice in California. Then I worked for a fee-for-service office that took no insurance. Now I'm back to a mostly fee-for-service but some PPO practice, and haven't worked for corporate, and I probably will not. But that's just, where I'm at. I'm trying to champion and just promote other students to feel as if they have the autonomy to make the right decisions for themselves based on what they want, and to arm them with the right tools so that they know what they don't know way sooner.
Got it. That makes a whole lot of sense. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is, you were fortunate enough to come to a mastermind that Dave Steck and I put on. You met Dave at Bill Trout's Grits and Nachos event. And, one of the things that Dave talks about is doing good. So I wanted to get your opinion on that, considering you're, a fresh out of school dentist, and doing good. So can you touch base on that slightly?
Absolutely. So, I have immense respect not only for yourself, but also for Dave and all that he stands for with his family. That's the number one compliment that I can give that man, is that obviously he's extremely impressive. Anyone that would see his resume or just sit through one of his lectures, he's incredibly articulate, incredibly intelligent, knows what he's talking about clearly. But when it comes to family, or the core values that man holds near and dear to his heart, and that's the things that I look in people when I meet them, is, what does this person hold as highest to them? And he holds family. He has his family working in his business. He's a firm believer in that you want to teach all this or learn these things with your kids so that you build generational wealth, not just for your generation, but for all of the generations to come. So for me, it's all about doing good as well. And that not only am I going to do good for my family, do good for myself, but also do good for others, which is why part of my other, passion projects that I have through my nonprofit is I'm running basically a scholarship fund in honor of my grandfather that was a dentist, called the Dr. Salvatore Spallone Scholarship Fund. And I hope to raise money to be able to collect enough to give one student 1 full year of dental education, because I know dental education can be expensive. Because along the way, I've known that there have been a lot of people, a lot of mentors, or not even mentors of mine, just people along the way that have done good for no return whatsoever to them own selves, only to just do something for me, to make sure that they help me with my career. Like for you, you have done so much for me already, like Elijah, like Dave, like some of these other amazing men that I've met since January that have gone out of their way simply to help me because they see something in me and they want to help me with my career. And all they want to do is help. That's really all it is at the end of the day. So I'm a firm believer in that, because people have helped me along the way. I'm going to do everything that I can. Even if I don't have time for it, I'll make time for it to make sure that I help other people, because that also feeds my soul.
Super impressive. So is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't gotten to yet before we moved into the lightning round Q&A?
I have a question for you, in that if you were to give some advice to, a student or, first year dentist like myself about what to prepare for the future, that maybe doesn't want to just be a clinical dentist, because a lot of people know your background, and I know your background of that. You started as mainly a clinical dentist, and then now you've transitioned to doing, a lot more and then some. So what would be your best advice for somebody that's looking to maybe make that transition eventually, regardless of what point it is in their career?
So, dentists are so focused on the clinical dentistry. Part of what I want them to focus on is the business side, because you can always transition away from clinical dentistry and focus on, you can have multiple practices. You can do marketing like I did. I didn't want to own multiple practices, but a lot of that goes with the business side of dentistry. And I think it's an ignored part. So I appreciate the fact that you have gone to events that are just not clinical based. You're going to come to Supercharge in September, which is a marketing business leadership conference. It's not a clinical event. So I think that if you focus on the business side, it opens your doors up to a lot of different things rather than just focusing on clinical dentistry, where if you just focus on clinical and know nothing else, you are limited into really what you are able to go into. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, for sure. I was a firm believer in seeing that, as we know, our dental education lacks teaching us about, the basics of how to run an office. They maybe glance over, okay, this is what a fee for service office is. Maybe you should set up an LLC. Maybe you should set up an S corp, but there's no real explanation of the whys or what are the benefits or what you need to look out for. And I feel like those are things that I realized along the way of like, oh, wow, I don't know anything about this. I need to figure this out. And I know there are those around me that know this. So that's why, again, I networked and I reached out to people like Dave, like yourself, like some other people that I've met along the way that I'm like, hey, they know information that I need. And I would really love to learn from that person.
Well, that's great. That's great. So Cole, I want to transition to my lightning round Q&A. I love this part of the podcast. 8 to 10 questions, again, rules, just answer them fairly quickly. You don't have to go into long drawn out answers. That's not the point of this. It's to get some of these lightning round questions out pretty quickly. So the first one, who would you love to collaborate with and what would you love to collaborate on?
I would really love to collaborate with my former mentor, Dr. Greg Winteregg, because we truly started something amazing and I would really love to see it to fruition.
Got it. Can you describe or outline your typical day?
My typical day is I wake up in the morning, I have some coffee, I have some water, I go see patients. After I leave seeing patients, I come home, I decompress, I have some food, I go to the gym, I put on amazing music, I'm instantly transported to what my happiness joy quota for the day is. I come home, I do some things around here. I'm exceptionally grateful right before I end my day for all the wonderful things that happened to me along the way. And I look for ways that I can improve on the day going forward.
That's good. If you had a magic stick, what are 3 things you would change in the world right now?
I would change who is compensated handsomely for what. So again, maybe a orthopedic surgeon might be more handsomely compensated than an NBA All-Star. I would ensure that a lot more people have access to basic healthcare. I would also ensure that children would not have to suffer as much with things that they are not prepared for, like cancer and other stuff like that we can't do anything about.
Okay, great. What have you read online recently that has inspired you?
Something that I've read recently online, I think, is honestly just seeing a lot of these young individuals from the ages of 18 to 30 years old that are figuring out how to be independently successful and wealthy outside of school, and figuring out how to live their best life at an early age with financial freedom.
What is the number one tactic you use to stay organized?
Number one tactic I do is to be exceptionally intentional and very much so focused on what I'm doing in the current moment, not to get scatterbrained, especially with people or with any task at hand. I make sure that I give my all, my full attention, my undivided attention to that individual, that task.
Got it. Okay. How do you define success?
I define success, as I kind of touched on it a little bit before, financial freedom, being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with those that I love, and ensuring that I have a lot more quantity time with the people that I love, because you never know when the quality moments are going to happen.
What business-related book has inspired you the most, or what is your favorite book?
My favorite book ever is The Power of One by Bryce Courtenay, and I believe it wholeheartedly that the power of the belief system of one person, that one person can do anything they set their mind to, and the resilience of the human spirit is very high.
What have you learned from the most successful person you know?
I have learned from the most successful person that I know that what it comes down to at the end of the day is making sure that you have all of the time in the world to spend with those that you love the most, whether that be family, friends, or the people that you meet along the way that feed your soul.
If you lost everything you worked for tomorrow, what would be the first step in starting over?
First step in starting over is to go somewhere absolutely amazing to absolutely remind myself of how amazing it is to live in this world, and that I have a lot more to be grateful for than I know it at the current moment.
What do you think is one of the most undervalued professions as we speak now?
I think one of the most undervalued professions is that of an educator. So I'm not just going to say teacher this, anybody that educates, because they truly have in their power the ability to change lives.
What habits have helped make you successful?
Habits to make me successful would be tenacity, resilience, making sure that, again, I give my all into whatever task is at hand, but also being able to multitask well. And I'd say the final thing is to make sure that at the end of the day, I am steadfast in creating great relationships with the right people.
Last question before we wrap it up. What is one subscription, it could be either personal or business, you cannot live without?
One subscription, I would say Spotify. If I didn't have music in my life would not nearly be as enjoyable as it is.
Well, Cole, this was great information for those listening and viewing. Why don't you give people your contact information, or how can people reach out to you to find out more about if they wanted to connect with you for whatever reason?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to figure out what's going on in my life, what I'm doing, is to follow me on Instagram at drdr.cole. My first name Cole, my last name Herzik. So again, that's at dr.coleherzik. If you want, you can listen to some of the things that I've got on Spotify from my old podcast, Dental Student Vibes Podcast, my current podcast for my nonprofit, the Private Dentist Alliance, and my outside podcast for my passion project of mentoring young men at The Man.
Great information. So, Cole, thank you so much for joining me today. Please reach out, guys, if you want to learn more about what Cole's doing, or you want to connect with Cole. Feel free to send him a friend request on Facebook. I'm sure he won't say no. I'm at the point now, I have 4,997 friends. I have to be very careful who I let in, because I don't have any more friends available to me. But, guys, if you liked this episode, please share it. Please let your colleagues know. Please tell them to listen to Cole on the Raving Patients podcast. I want to remind everybody about my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice. It's in Scottsdale, Arizona, September 27th and 28th at the Scott Resort and Spa, focused on mentorship, leadership, business, marketing, finance. Lots of those things will be discussed. It's not clinical based. You can learn more at superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING to save $100 off the event. Cole, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate you being on it and sharing your expertise with the audience. And as I end every single one of my podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Cole, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you, Len.